folks. My name is Mo Amir, and this is VANCOLOUR, British Columbia's bona fide culture and politics TV talk show right here on Check and Check Plus. We're also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Tonight, is Vancouver really a no-fun city? And what makes a city fun or no fun? Let's talk about it with Canadian television personality and local legend Fiona Forbes. But first, school's out for summer. But did the last school year return to normal, or will there be lasting changes to public education in BC post-lockdown? Maybe there should be lasting changes. Joining me to discuss is a true modern-day Renaissance man. He's a high school teacher in Surrey, BC, but you probably know him as one of BC's best comedians who has featured on various Just for Laughs festivals and CBC's The Debaters. You can find his latest comedy album, Long Stories for No Reason, on Apple Music or Spotify. You might also recognize him as a commentator for the BC Curling Championship here on Check, as he himself is a competitive curler who has won multiple medals at the BC Men's Provincials. He's also a professional musician and the co-host of the ever-popular podcast, Blocked Party. He is John Cullen. John, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you. I feel like I got you out of breath with
It's a long resume, man. It's so much stuff.
Every time I come on your show, you always you get the whole list, which is impressive.
It's easy when you have a resume like yours.
Well, thank you. I think people were wondering at home, they're like, oh, we got to get a teacher on the show, but if he could also be a comedian and a curler, that would be ideal.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah,
and a teacher to boot. So that's the big one. I have to ask you, so by the end of this school year, did things feel like they were back to normal?
I mean, I think they're getting there. I think it is definitely, I think COVID has impacted everybody from teachers to students. I think the switch to online learning has been really tricky. I don't think it quite feels like we're back to normal yet, because especially, Omicron set in and then it was like, ooh, are we going to have to stop going to school again? Are we going to have to go on Zoom? There was that sort of soft relaunch after Christmas in the wake of Omicron. So I think it's hard to feel like it's ever going to go back to true normal, at least at the moment, because you're always constantly wondering, where's the next variant? Are we in trouble here?
Right. Are you hyper vigilant when you see your runny nose in your classroom? This could be a super spreader event.
I feel like with COVID, honestly, teachers and students, I think we just had to kind of give it up.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't really, because kids are kids.
Yeah.
I teach high school, so they're not, they're still germ factories, but maybe not as much as like elementary school kids. But you do, I think, like coming back from COVID, especially the first time, it was sort of like, oh my gosh, this is a real issue. And then at some point you just kind of have to put it out of your mind, because otherwise you'd lose your mind. You'd be like, this is crazy. You'd hear a kid sniffling. What are you doing here? It was though an interesting shift in the power dynamics, because you'd be coming back from COVID. And normally as a teacher, you're sort of used to being in charge of the class. But then in the back of your mind, you're like, one of these kids could make me really sick, like really sick. Yeah. So all of a sudden you're sort of like, oh, you're giving the kids got a little bit of the power back in COVID in a weird way. If they were sort of coughing or unmasked, you're like, oh, geez.
Right. But it feels like it shifted a little bit back.
I think it shifted back to normal a little bit more now. Yeah, for sure. And I think, it is, people, masks, no masks, all that stuff was a big debate. But for teachers too, you lose a little bit of your authority with a mask on. It just is the way it is, right? And I don't know why that is, but it makes you a little bit more faceless, right?
Yeah, you can't scowl at kids.
Especially for me. I've got some really good looks but yeah, so I think that was a big thing is sort of like getting rid of the masks made it feel more normal, because too, you could see the kids' faces as well, right? So there is something about being able to see each other and talk to each other face to face that makes a huge difference in teaching.
Now, you're also somewhat of a philosopher, because you have some radical ideas about
People are
teaching.
Always saying that. They're like, Johnny Socrates, they call me.
You're not a fan of report cards. Is it just because you don't like to write them?
Yeah, that's all it is, really. Especially now. No, I just think it's not even report cards necessarily. I think the conversation between teachers and parents is important. But COVID taught us a lot of stuff. And I think one of the things that it taught us was that we don't really need grades all the time. You know, like moving things to Zoom, it became a lot harder to evaluate kids in the traditional way of submitting things, giving them a letter grade, etc. It did become a more feedback-based system. And I think for kids, that's really helpful. And I think teachers too.
And I'm on board with all this, but it sounds like you just give out easy A's.
I mean, it depends. I mean, if the kid's funny, sure. I mean, he's a good guy. Just give him an A. Yeah.
I love that. So obviously kids are off school right now for summer.
They are.
Do you think that helps to have that break for kids, or do they lose stuff that they learn throughout the year?
Well, I mean, here's my other radical idea, Mo. I think we shouldn't have summer break.
Wow.
All the kids who are watching Check on a Sunday night are like, no.
The kids just loved you about the report card stuff, and now they've turned on you.
Oh, we thought he was our friend. No, honestly, I just think, you know, you see it coming into like May and June, everybody's done.
Yeah.
Everybody's burnt out.
Yeah.
And we get almost all of the break at once. I mean, we have spring break, we have Christmas break, but those are just 2 weeks kind of at arbitrary times of the year. And then we've got a big, like 10 weeks. Here's 10 weeks off.
Yeah.
And I just feel like if you take the sort of 14 weeks or so that we have off right now and you divide those up, so say you get like April off, July off, and December off, and then you get a week off as well, you know, in October or February. That to me feels like a more conducive educational
so you want
system.
it spread out.
I want it spread out. I'm not saying like kids get into school all summer. That's what this guy wants. It's not like that at all.
Okay.
I just feel like splitting it up in that way is more conducive to both learning from a like mental burnout perspective, but then also what you're saying too, the retention of information, I think becomes easier when school is a sort of more fluid thing throughout the year.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So wrapping this all up, throughout this whole COVID experience, it's not over, as we know.
Yeah.
But what have you learned as a teacher? And has anything from the lockdown experience sort of informed how you teach?
Great question. I've learned that kids are, I think, more malleable than we give them credit for. I think, a lot of the kids it was a really tough adjustment for everybody, but particularly for them, especially kids who are looking to graduate. I think we learned that they can learn a lot more independently than maybe our school system gives them credit for. And as for me, I learned that I love teaching in my pajamas. That's really what I learned through all this.
Are you going to do that in person? Or
I would like to keep my job. So yeah.
John, I love it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Folks, he's a modern Renaissance man, high school teacher, comedian, curling commentator, drummer, podcaster, and probably a whole lot more that I missed. He is John Cullen. Find This Is VANCOLOUR wherever you listen to your podcasts, as we're going to record some overtime with John to discuss why he and his partner are debating moving out of Vancouver. Speaking of which, as we are now out of the COVID lockdowns, is Vancouver really a no-fun city? One of my favorite people, Fiona Forbes, will give us her take up next. I'm Mo Amir. This is VANCOLOUR.